All right. Hey guys, welcome. All right. Here we go. For the second Tough Frog reading. Last one that I was at, I stood along the wall. Stood the whole time and watched. The place was packed. It was a historical read.
Yeah.
A few weeks ago, Viola sent me a message and asked, would I please help MC this? I was so honored. And then I told her, I said, absolutely, because I'll get one of the best seats in the house. So the way we're going to run this is first we're going to have a celebration of Annie's work. We'll have a roundhouse, as we call it, and it'll start off with Sue Menebroker. And then once we finish that, we'll have the individual Tough Broads read their work. So let me begin with an intro, and I'm sure all of you know and have incredibly warm stories and memories of Annie. And let me read from text, her bio. "80 years was simply not enough for Annie Menebroker. Known affectionately as Annie, she was a poet of international standing. Writing from the 1950s to her departure in 2016, Menebroker published over 20 books of poetry and was heavily anthologized. Her work appeared in many small press magazines and poetry journals. She was enamored of poetry and poets, fascinated by people, and fully engaged in life. Her friendships were legion. Annie was known as one of the few women involved in the no apology school of meat poetry, writing with a clarity and emotion that enveloped the reader into her world of raw reality. In one moment, her poetry is soft and inviting. In the next, she exposes a world that is shackled by its heartlessness. No sense of illusion with her writing, only honesty and purity of wordplay that resonates with us all. She is still deeply missed, and I'd like to have you join us in this celebration of Annie's work. And I'll introduce you to Sue Menebroker, her daughter.
Can you hear me? Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
I'm not a reader. My mom, I understand now looking at this crowd why she never wanted to read either. But I hope I can do her poetry justice. When Dave and Viola asked me to gather some poems of hers together, it was quite a feat because she wrote a lot. So I tried to get some that were from her early days as well as her last chapbook that she had. The first one is called The Bull That Died in the Rain, and this was actually, I believe, done in '77. He came to me in a dream, holding a light and beckoning. Because I dreamed, there was no danger, and I followed. He showed me an eternity of dreamers, masturbating on death, whose desires were finished. In the night of my learning, there came a hunger. When I woke, the dream was slowly digesting, and the plenty of my being began to eat the bed. This next one was actually from her very first chapbook, done in, or actually, never mind, I'm not even going to try it. It's titled This. You get out of bed, solemnly naked, and lumber somewhere out of sight. The house is a mystery, the way it swallows whoever leaves warm sheets. lying here in my own bare skin, I think how I love the sight of unclothed people, going about the business of love. Everything else is so ruined, the room, the world, the landscape. The way to stay beautiful is to avoid mirrors and look only at those who truly love back. Okay, this one's actually from her first chapbook. It isn't everything. The oldest profession, love. I love so much that I either am the world's biggest whore or its greatest saint. And this last one is from her very last chapbook that a dear friend of hers, Lynn Savitt, back east, did for her 80th birthday. And my mom wrote till the last days. The title is Today It May Rain. Today it may rain, but that's no promise any more than being an artist means you're a chipmunk. All night long, the radio issues sorrow as low as the sound can go. My neighbor, who flings himself around and throws bricks on his floor, can sleep through it. The flowers she bought lasted so long, all the water disappeared. Was an idea that kept the stalks green. Tulips bent down in benediction. It all turns artificial in the gentle way you seek me out.
Wonderful. I'm just going to read two. Now, am I coming through okay?
Yeah.
Okay. The first one is called Daffodils and Hunter Thompson. When I'm 90, I'll go live in a dumpster and wear old pieces of flags. I'll roar when I can and piss on the walls of garbage that have become home. Visions of Hunter Thompson will dance in my dreams, and songs he sang will spill into my mouth. Wine and words and life will be my backdrop in this immense theater where art and craft define my being, along with surfboards and mountains and a young group of yellow daffodils that pronounce beauty in spite of us.
Yeah.
This is one that Sue asked me to read, and I love it. I'm glad she asked me to read it. It's called The Poem That Was Magnificent. The poem that was magnificent came over email, came like the earth shaking around you, came like a flood of beautiful language. It could never be a haiku or close to a tanka. It would be Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania. It would be adjectives and gospel truth. It would be deep river honesty. It would be the mosquito and the leopard. It would sting. It would eat flesh. It would sing arias and balance 12 moons. It would be valet service to your first appetite. It would make you not want to be a poet anymore, but to be the poet's material. It would be like the first time your child came to you and called you its own country.
Annie, we're with you here. Sue asked me to read this poem, Warming, and it refers both to Victoria and the people in the conversation are myself and your mom. Warming. Here in Sacramento's old park on Alhambra Boulevard, we sit and talk. The Clooney pool is still empty, We remember Victoria's poem about it. The muddy green pond floats its ducks and geese. We sit on a bench beside a man playing his guitar. This late winter pleasure floats in our hearts, breaking through memory as disturbed as the pond's murky bottom. You tell me a story about being in another country, about how you and a man chased a rainbow, stood in it, but it kept shifting ahead of you. You couldn't keep the gold of that moment, except now, in remembering. Far from where we talk, a huge shelf of ice falls into the ocean as we watch the ripples in the water. Second one is called Very Small Slices. Buddha is always calm because he puts a shot of brandy in his black tea. I am always anxious because I wonder if the goat chewing on tin in the parking garage has come to eat my soup cans. The mixture of truth and stream of consciousness makes a strange cake, which I promise to eat in very small slices. And the church bells that rang out so beautifully when I drove here distanced themselves from me with an attitude of sameness. How much are we missing just by having things around us unchanged? Even the dropping sun becomes a quick song that the stars forget to memorize.
Yeah.
Sue asked me to read this poem, The Blue Fish. It is not the conservative life that stifles, but the someone who offers to share it with you, endorses it, propagates it. Somewhere inside of me, this tiny blue fish swims. It bumps against my quiet. Its little mouth opens and shuts like a busy supermarket door. It has no entrails. It is just this tiny blue body floating inside of me, making an impression like Braille. I try to find food for it with words. It swims into my brain, and in the night, I have a little blue orgasm. This is called Tulare Motel. And Annie had quite a friend, Wilma, who, she just loved her. And this is the story of what Wilma did in the summertime. Tulare Motel. Sometimes, if summer wouldn't get over itself, Wilma would take her August body to a motel for a couple of days where air conditioning was another sweet revival. Her apartment was left to take up the slack, books and poems everywhere, a Catholic world of reality, roots of Oklahoma canned in clear jars, waiting for winter. This cool miracle weighed heavily, coming from her slight wallet. But she blessed this strange room, played cards with her brother, and called her friends to spread word of her survival.
We have another hand of salute. And it's now at this point that we're going to hear from each individual tough broad. And we're going to begin with Victoria Dalkey. I had a great afternoon with these guys. Yesterday afternoon, we all wore no makeup. We had our hair down. We helped each other up out of chairs. We fetched water and told side stories and wept a little and laughed a lot. And so that was the purest form of a reading.
Yeah.
And I heard the backstories on some of these. And so we encouraged one another to tell those stories that are attached to those poems, which gives them that resonance. Victoria Dalkey is the longtime art critic for the Sacramento Bee. She is the author of 2 chapbooks, 29 poems, and In the Absence of Silver, and co-authored with Kay Lindsay of a third, Map of the Pearl. With composer and guitarist Gilda Taffet, she collaborated on Sub Rosa, a composition for guitar, soprano, and spoken word. She received a BA in English and an MA in poetry writing from California State University, Sacramento, where she studied with Clyde Enruff, Dennis Schmitz, Kathryn Hohlwein, and Olivia Castellano. She's a past participant in the Squaw Valley Writers Conference poetry program. With her husband, artist Fred Dalkey, she participated in En La Cache, a collaboration of vision and voice at the Southern Pacific Depot Warehouse. And that received a grant from the Sacramento Metropolitan Arts Commission. Please welcome Victoria Dalkey.
You know, one of the things I love doing is collaborating with other people, and Gilda was wonderful to collaborate with. Fred, on the other hand, we almost got divorced, but I got a good poem out of it. So. I want to start with one of the most recent poems in the book. And this is called On Reading Araceli Gourmet's The Black Maria. Araceli Gourmet is an Ethiopian woman who lives in this country now, and the title, The Black Maria, it refers to the seas on the dark side of the moon. So Maria is the plural of mare, which is the Latin for sea. There's also a reference in here to a cowbird, which I know about thanks to Kathleen Lynch's husband, who is a birder. And cowbirds are parasites, and they follow herds of cattle and feed on the insects that rise up in the dust that they kick up. And cowbirds also, like mockingbirds, lay their eggs in other birds' nests, and their offspring are very greedy, and the other poor little things don't get much food, so they're parasitical in that sense too. Anyway, on reading Araceli Gourmet's The Black Maria. A storm is on the way. Acacias rain golden flowers under a darkening sky. Araceli tells us a tale of black grief fattened in a slave ship's hold. A storm is on the way. Black Lives Matter, we shout today, marching for Trayvon or Freddie Gray under a darkening sky. A cowbird king and his greedy offspring connive with thieves in towering bowers. A storm is on the way. They dine with the Chinese head of state at the luxurious club at Mar-a-Lago under a darkening sky. Missiles rain bombs on a Syrian night while children fight for breath. Another storm has come today under a pitch black sky. The next poem I want to read is one that I read on the radio when we did our interview at CAP Public Radio, and if I can find it. Yes, it's called The Jade Suit, and it's one of my older poems, which has been pared down a bit from what it used to be. And it is about, it stems from an art show that my husband and I saw in Seattle back in, I think, about 1980, called The Son of Heaven, which was Treasures from China. And the Jade Suit was a kind of burial suit that was sewn together that was worn by Prince Liu Sheng, who was active in 150 BC. So, the Jade Suit. A soldier digging trenches on Lingshan Mountain breaks through the crust and falls through a tunnel strewn with rubble into an underground palace muscled out centuries ago. For the secret apartment of Prince Liu Sheng, bedchamber of Lady Dao Wan. What the soldier touches turns to dust. Silks thin as locust wings, embroidered with scudding clouds, fill his nostrils, coat his throat. Yet the soldier thinks nothing of these fancies, nothing of Liu Sheng's mantle of terminal incorruptibility. 2,000 green squares sewn with gold thread, cool as a chrysalis. He thinks instead of green onions sending up shoots, his mother slicing medallions of bamboo the color of mutton fat jade, his wife plopping a raspberry nipple into his daughter's mouth, opened like a pale purple orchid. Okay, I have to look at my son always has a set list for his band, and this is my set list. Okay, now, this poem is for Annie, who we love dearly and miss terribly. And it's called Ecology in the Old City Cemetery for Annie Menebroker, 1936 to 2016. And the we in the poem is not Annie and me, it's my friend Julia, who likes to have picnics in cemeteries. I need to wet my whistle here. Hang on.
People used to do
good.
that when cemeteries were privately owned.
That's Victoria for you.
Why not?
Not so tough, but very clumsy. Okay, this is Elegy in the Old City Cemetery for Annie. A new paradigm for the mind holds it is like a cloud, vaporous, amorphous, a shape-shifting function of imagination. At the cemetery, we eat brie and ham, drink Chinese oolong in Japanese cups of porcelain clay glazed matte black. We talk of mood swings, mysterious dreams of dying animals, cops and pilots who see UFOs in the night desert sky at Roswell. You drop your cup on cement. We see its bone white insides, a jagged break, unmendable, even with gold. For solace, we construct a puffy white cumulus cloud, the kind children draw over treetops under the sun in a scribbled blue sky. Ask why, if the mind is a cloud we only imagine, do we hold it so close like a friend who's been given a death sentence? Our breath displaces cold air here in the graveyard where we picnic in winter, condenses on the steps of a small mausoleum. We press our noses to the milky glass door, like children shut out of their houses on rainy days when no one is home. Okay, the next one is a poem that I belong to a group called the Red Wings. We're a poetry group that get together about every 6 weeks. And one of our members is Kathleen Lynch, and she gives great prompts for us. And this poem came out of a prompt that she gave us. It's called Mary Theobald, Winter of '52. She was 17 when snow began to fall. It fell until the lake was whited out, the town cut off, the highway over Donner Pass shut down. SP freight trains stalled in ramshackle sheds in Norden. The storm went on for days. Rainmen trapped, food scarce, toilets full. Mary and her folks hungrier by the day. She dreamed of summer when she would leave for college at UOP, faux Ivy League school in flat farmland where tomatoes, asparagus, pears, and walnuts grow. At least they had wood for fire, could melt snow to drink. They didn't know the brakemen in the snowed over tunnels were hungry too. One called Wild Bill when he drank, lost his paycheck at the casino, pawned his father's watch in Reno, kept their spirits up with corny jokes. At last, planes came, dropped food as if on war-torn camps in Korea. Mary and Bill survived, but never met. The snowmelt came, houses at Tahoe shed white coats. The trains began to run again. 28 years after the storm, Bill, 76, died at Mercy Hospital in the Valley. Kidneys failed, all systems shut down. At 80, Mary died in the Valley too, during a thunderstorm, the heavens opening up to welcome her. The Wild Bill in the poem was my father. And it was very wearisome. It was a terrible storm, and they were trapped for, a long, long time, and we were all very scared. But fortunately, it turned out okay. Okay, I'd like to read next a poem called Portrait of My Husband as an Italian Plum. The tree practices its multiplication tables, morning blossoms plus, let me start over, okay. The tree practices its multiplication tables, morning blossom times evening blossom equals the black dog who follows wherever you go. Petals drop on the darkening lawn. The fireflies of our cigarette tips circle until the tree disappears like one heart into another. Soon we'll lose track of the days, forget again to pick the small tart crop, though one low-hanging plum saved from birds will remain ripe enough to sweeten a tongue. And this next poem I'm reading for my friend Grace Munakata, who wanted to know how it sounded out loud. And she's here. Thank you, Grace. And it's included in the chat book I've been sending around, which keeps getting rejected. But this particular poem did get accepted by the Bellevue Literary Review in New York City. So let's see if I can mess it up. It's called Watching the Olympics on Morphine. Divers on cliff-high platforms in mint ice, air of steam, their spare bodies curled, hairless, from ice-green platforms, thin slips of girls tumbling time and again. A speaker in the hallway blares, Mary had a little lamb. Cue for nurse to chase down the man with sundown psychosis. Lead him back to girls in bikinis, sinking in sand, gray as ash, as dust, to spike the ball, then fall to the fake beach, sticking to their sweaty backs, increases behind the knee. The girls sinking over and over, curled, panting, resting and rising. Me tied by the ankle to the side of the bed. Let's see. Okay. This next poem is called Letter to Q. Q is Quentin Duval, who is part of our Red Wings group. In fact, the Red Wings group is named after his press, the Red Wings press, and his favorite bird, red-winged blackbirds. So, it's called Letter to Q. I met a famous artist the other day at the Browns Foundry. You know his work, full of duende, like yours. His figures always going into the dark or coming out of it. He grabbed my hand and said, "My son put the clay in my hands. I couldn't do anything after my wife died. 60 years we were together. Every day we talked. I don't think she understood my work, but she had good instincts. Now my son hands me the clay to model the heads for the bronze. I work all day making these masks, but the nights are bad and the weekends." He held on to me as if afraid I would leave. We sat, held hands, watched his son pick up a blowtorch, melt the bronze skin with a roaring blue flame, the patina blossoming on a skull-like head, a pitted face with a huge nose and empty eyes. He said it was a mask like the ones they wear in Iraq, in the green zone, where it's safe. I think of him now, how he wasn't in the green zone that day, how he never got back. We're almost there. This is a poem that I read at our former reading, but I wanted to read it again because I'm so outraged that the United States dissented from the resolution at the UN to provide care to women who have been victims of combat, victims in war. It was really watered down. So anyway, it's called His Favorite. All morning, Ina, I have been thinking of you, hoping you are wandering in paradise, whatever paradise is for you. I keep wanting to place you in a Persian miniature, cool as sherbet in a mint green gown, walking in a landscape of palace gardens lined with gold, in gardens evenly dotted with small explosions of wildfires and leaping gazelles. I hope you are there with a prince who loves you, under a crescent moon hung in a dark blue sky, scattered with stars even in daytime. I hope your body has been restored, that your bruises and cuts are healed, that your skull, blasted away, has reformed. In truth, Ina, I don't know what paradise would be for you. Perhaps a bowl of hot soup and a piece of bread eaten in peace with your family, and then an uneventful stroll through the park. Maybe a trip to Euro Disney or a day in Dubrovnik before the war began. Whatever it is, I wish it for you. But I know that your body still lies hidden deep in the Bosnian forest, your body and the bodies of your sisters. Indicted for war crimes in Sarajevo, he recites their names: Amela, Anisa, Alma, and Misa, Meira, and Sarah. But you, Ina, you were his favorite, he says, the man who raped you, marched you into the woods, and shot you in the back of the head. He didn't enjoy it, he says, raping you and your sisters, raping you with his brothers in a gang, taking turns until they were all done. He didn't enjoy it, yet you were his favorite. What does that mean? Were you the prettiest? Did you wear a red shawl? Were your hands pushing him away, soft and warm on his skin? Did you stare at him until he turned and exchanged a human glance? Was your beauty so perfect that, like Beatrice, one glimpse of your face could change a man's life? Pale and frightened, that's how he described you. A pale and frightened 17-year-old. Your face comes to him every day, Ina. Pale, frightened, alive, and his favorite. I'm just going to read one more, which is sort of comes out of my experience as being an art critic for the Sacramento Bee. It's called Crows, and it's for Tom Philippe, who is a very talented young painter. Outside, dissident crows flap tarry wings, puff up oiled feathers, then settle down sleek projections, complicating the geometry of trees. One struts, head jutting as he paces, marshaling strays, calling out crude orders. A few shoot out from branches and back, black yo-yos on invisible strings. Inside, the high window in the dining room becomes a mirror, a blinding band of light you can't look into or at. Something is moving, but I can't see it. Blinded by sun, limbs stiff with inertia, I hear it moving under the light westward with the crows. The phone rings. A young woman crying tells me a painter whose last show I didn't see is dead, killed on the road near Point Arena. Can I write about it, she asks, explain the importance of his life and death? I say I'll do what I can, knowing I can't do anything. Can't revise his life or transform his death. Can't give him his last review. Can't even find any words to help her, and can't find the meaning of the crows in this poem I keep writing in the dark.
Thank you, Victoria.
Oh, you're quite welcome.
I love the work. Our next reader is Kathryn Hohlwein. Kathryn Hohlwein was known as Joyce Gerald throughout her whole childhood in the Rocky Mountains, at the very foot of our American Mount Olympus in the Wasatch Range. Though a Unitarian rather than a Mormon, she adored Salt Lake City for its weather, its scenery, and its skiing. She studied English and philosophy and French at the University of Utah and received her master's in English from Middlebury College at Red Loaf in the Green Mountains of Vermont. Thereafter, she studied on scholarships in France and Spain, met and married the German artist Hans-Jürgen Hohlwein, and they went together to Beirut, both of them to teach there, before spending a year in the highlands of Scotland, and then coming to the USA to teach at a series of universities. They both were professors at California State University, Sacramento. both with happy careers. And they had 3 children, Reinhardt, Andrea, and Laura. After retirement, Kathryn created the Readers of Homer, a nonprofit organization that provided all-day or all-night audience participation readings of the Iliad and/or the Odyssey of Homer. She's done that all over the world. They have done so many readings, they now are known as the International Readers of Homer, and they continue to this day. Kathryn has loved, studied, taught, and written poetry all her life. I recall, and I don't know what the occasion was, but I was asked to come and read to her master's class at CSUS, and I still have the vision of it, that room of students that were so adoring, and they took every word that she had to say, you know, they understood who they were learning from. So I'd like to introduce you to Kathryn.
You shouldn't have added that, Tracy. That brought tears to my eyes. And now I'll do what I always end up doing. It's crying as I read or teach. I woke up this morning with a disfigured face. My face is a little different right now. And I know what it is because 3 weeks ago, I had the same thing on this side of my cheek and called the ambulance, went to emergency thinking I was having a stroke because my face was pulled down. It was a salivary gland blockage. And this morning I have another one here. So I thought, oh, damn. But then I thought, you know, it's kind of appropriate. Yeah. It kind of points things out like they really are, you know. like weird shit happens as you get older. And you're stuck with it. So my darling children, Laura, tried to think of what to do. She suggested, she said, you'll be reading down anyway, it won't look quite so bad. and then my son brought me a mask, Laura, and you know, she said, well, you can wear this with the show so much. And I thought, God, that reminds me of Trump. I'm not gonna do it. And this was your little purse. And I have never thought of myself as the toughest of us old broads, but I certainly have been and am the oldest by 15 years or so. That is true. And so just don't look at me so much, just listen to what I say. And I want to thank Viola for conjuring up this whole tough old broads history. And it's been wonderful for all of us. I want to, of course, thank Sue and Annie for just Annie's life and love. And what a doll she was. And Tracy, thank you. Yeah. So, I have not published much at all in my life. I've been doing a lot of other stuff. And consequently, I'm going to read from all kinds of periods of my life without, I mean, I started writing when I was 8, but I'm not going to read that 8-year-old. But I just have done it all my life, and it's sustained me, I think, through a lot. I think of poetry as being kind of the polar opposite of spin. I do. And yeah, I think it's a good way to think of it. And so I always begin by saying something of another poet. This time it's a woman poet, Poetry Month, Christina Rossetti of England, 19th century, tiny poem. What are heavy? Sea sand and sorrow. What are brief? Today and tomorrow. What are frail? Spring blossoms and youth. What are deep? The ocean and truth. Let me quickly add thanks to Dave Bowles for doing this. It's really a lovely book. We're happy. To Laura for the cover. Stuart, all of you who helped. I also write I think of a lot of short poems that come to me in the night, and I'm just going to throw them in. They're very short, like 2 lines, so they may not be poems, they may just be statements, I'm not sure. But I will begin with a poem I wrote when Reinhardt was a baby. Well, I was about 27 when I wrote this in Scotland. And I love this poem. We were living in the remote highlands of Scotland. Very smart decision of Hans and me. And I used to get books delivered from the British Library Service. A little cart would come puttering around the road, bringing me books, even rare books. And I'd read them, give them back 2 weeks later, and they'd take them away and bring me back new ones. What a service, what an attitude towards life that represented. So anyway, at that time I was interested in Neoplatonism, and I was reading the Neoplatonist 5th century AD named Proclus. These are his words, but I love this poem anyway. These are all his words. It's called Arching in Moonlight. Proclus has assured me the heliotrope has its special prayer, that precisely prayer is his doing as it follows the sun's course through the day. The selenotrope, its cousin, likewise prays its best in the moonlight. It silently arches, loving that silvery light. Could we hear their rotations, the air softly buffeted, petals would sing hymns to their king, such as is within their powers. A little more depressed poem. Yeats said, William Butler Yeats. I wrote this when I was maybe 35. Clinging to mother's fond conviction of her daughter's inviolate beauty, to pool edge all of the luminous shallows and habitual way with the mirror, to the dear dispositions of one beloved body. For out there the water changes. What drops off is just the beginning. If we could see from above, we would know how the great shoal rips are only a turquoise selvage of a black and unrippable fabric whose warp has 15 dimensions that weave where no light spins. Blacker than my black heart when I cherish my own extinction is that playground of old dream fears. Going under is just the beginning. Achilles is microscopic, weeping on the sand. Dido, alone again, cries out through the ghost halls of Carthage. Yeats said even Homer might be mad as the wind and the snow. Don't do this. Make a list. Think of money. Don't do this. Make a list. Think of money. quits, but I might as well read another even worse one. Really, really bleak intervals. Sorry about this. I am gnawing at the mightily worked over bone of my extinction. I yap at it. It lies there white and dry. I try to stare it down. It goes on, lying dormant, dull, and tasting no more of something spirited or real, delivering. This labor wears me out. Here it arrives again, the trippy sun, the ever-returning envelope, sealed and again resealed. I hear the black fact rush me, locomotive in falling snow, its alien yellow light. Oh, sweet Keats, I ache for you, wishing on your star, your bones extinguishing coughs. I press upon the still full socket of my skull, till hairy little dots emboss the expansive darkness. They pepper the thick terrain of endless inward me alive. Of course, I think of Yorick. He, at least, had made the company laugh. Laughter cascading down the fog between bleak intervals of drink in Denmark's wintry light. And I think of how delicate the creatures are, considerate, abandoning no bones for us to trip upon or shatter with our spades. How well they hide from us, who are afraid, the nuisance of their deaths. They don't care to remind us of Auschwitz or give signals of our mayhem, except when they cross the streets. Of cannibals in our streets and hatreds interred in our muscles. Oh, poetry, you made me think like this. A stern acquaintance brought these thoughts to term. Acceptance of Rwanda, the terrible dragging of Hector, all genocides forever, and my friendly mother dead. I'll try to read a little happier one here.
Yeah, let's go.
This is a recent poem.
Okay.
Oh, by the way, I'm going to throw in one of my little poems. The poetry inside you is a chalice, and it's golden. Okay, in my driveway. I wonder if I could convince you that a snail's tracks made me think of Bach's well-tempered clavichord. Would you believe me when I assert that they weren't there last night, but completely there this morning, that its little smear steps were stitched across the driveway as if a consummate seamstress had put them precisely there, so good she could sew on concrete. Their steady, even purpose left a trail of clarity, even of meaningfulness, in the pearly, translucent intentions. Tiny, perfect rectangles seemed like pure lucidity. Bach is gone, the snail is gone, we never spoke or met. But I marvel at the application of miniature perfections, one after the other, evenly spaced like beads on a string, particulates in a wave. I don't know where they would take us, these undulating patterns, but I'm sure they're not forlorn, nor do they seem like nowhere. They go where I can't follow, prescribed precise inscribed notations. Oh, rosaries of joy underneath the engine, and each one has a certitude like faith. Thank you. This is similar. Not present enough. We are never present enough. Streetcar, firefly, bed, what we said and where we said it, what we thought and did not say. Nocturne, apricot, kiss, why we did not feel it deeply, why we had better things to do. Tulip, shoulder, smiles, where our minds were wandering, where good intentions failed. Twilight, robin, pillow, sage, what we did and where we did it, what we meant and did not mean, when we live and how we live it, when we die and how we die. Thank you. Just two more, I think. What my granddaughters see. Two of my granddaughters like to watch me sleep. At least they think I'm asleep. And I wonder what they see. White hair on white pillow, wrinkled arms caught in sheets. My little snort delights them. And they giggle and shush each other, thinking I do not know how much fun they're having. I do not mind at all, though it is strange to be stared at. I just wonder what they see. The spooky, dark flow of my longings, the poem giver inside me. Another short poem, which I really love. If I can remember. Ah, poetry. What else can chart the anvil and the thread, the hover of the great wingspan? Strange little thing. I want to read. I love to travel in Mexico and have done so a lot. And there's a little poem. I wrote a lot of poems there, but this is from maybe when I was in my 50s. I don't know. Daguerreotype. That Indian couple cramped into the narrow telephone booth looks like a daguerreotype, sepia brown from the dust, dimly lit through the dirty and fogged up pane. They cannot move, not much, and stand immobile in anxious time. I want it to be good news. I want nothing bad to have happened. Their tenderness seems eternal. A husband and a wife, Tarascan, very short. They lean close to each other's breath, as we once thought true lovers forever would. Her head upon his chest, her thorough comfort. I want it to be good news. I want nothing bad to have happened. Of course I must take a picture. How else do we remember? I came across some letter I wrote to my sister-in-law, Sabina, and I found in a poem I'd written in Germany in my 30s or 40s or 50s or something. And it was a poem about a blackbird known in Europe as the amsel, which is very beloved in Europe because it sings so magnificently, maybe more magnificently than nightingale. And my husband Hans always said, "Oh, you must hear the amsel." So I'd written this poem, I didn't even know, I just found it not a few weeks ago. I've never read it, and I've never even remembered writing it. It refers to my husband's birth town of Eisenach in East Germany. Hearing the amsel. Hearing the amsel after many years, its low chanson down the rain-soaked pine, the German boy whom she would know one day, know well enough to share 3 children by, that soft voice artist listening now in her to blackbirds, 2 of them, high over Eisenach in the war, promising him dreams. How to describe such intricacies of song, woven into loopings, crystal sound, cross-hatched like his lithograph, stricken, here a patch of darkness, there of light, and the 2 together once again. Hearing the amsel that he loved, the wet notes softer than the rain, the hard heart faster, sweeps across lost decades, tries to refigure cause, desists and reckons with poems that listen in the eyes of children. Waking to the amsel that he loved in wettest dawn under old family quilts, an American heart remembers the sweetest long-held largo. Hearing again this songbird that he loved, this brother, son, this husband, father, man. She listens to the notes of what sustains. The amsel brings in too much joy for tears, singing through shaken leaves across the years.
Oh, that's gorgeous.
Okay. 2 more, so not too long. Walt Whitman is still in love with me. True. Walt Whitman is still in love with me. And I return his love. But he loves you too, and your children, and even their children beyond. He thinks we all are beautiful. He loves to hear us speak. He says we have beautiful voices, a soft, poetic speech. He knows that inside we are artists, American, a deep. Physically, we are splendid, outlined against the water. We're kind to our baby brothers and consider the harlot our friend. How he does this is way beyond me. But I try to believe in him. I want to make him happy. I wrote a series of 16 poems in my 50s about a walnut orchard along the Sacramento River. This is the last poem in that. It's a gorgeous orchard. I still love going there. Orchard 16. Almost lost in circumference, I need to rejoin the world. I gravitate outward towards the blinding stripe of mustard, a sizzling yellow edge that starts where the orchard ends. Its surrounding brilliance that plays havoc with location. It is red-winged blackbird heaven, but it makes my life feel dizzy. Concentric thinking wants me, and I do love the shield and the circle. Still, in brightness, I lurch out to the riddle of linear time, To the 90-year-old child, the 7-year-old crone. Women's voices drift like pollen. They call back and forth like starlings, glossy and flushed out of hiding. I embrace myself like a basket piled high with available blessings.
To hear these poems a second time. And what's really amazing about it is that in that living room, Kathryn's home yesterday, it felt so very intimate. And then we come here with such a crowd, and the intimacy is even more. Yeah? And one of the things that I tell my students when they write poetry is I say, you know, you gotta say something for real. You gotta talk for real. One of my little mottos is, a poem is not a selfie. And by hearing these works, you know, you learn a little something about yourself, you learn something about the poet, and you learn something about the world. Yeah. And that's what's gorgeous about hearing all these guys. So, our last poet is the one who instigated all of this. And persisted and persisted, said, we're gonna do it again. With a book. Viola Weinberg. One of the more tenacious individuals that I've met. Definitely earns that title, tough old broad. Just tough broad, right? She is Sacramento Poet Laureate, serving from 2000 to 2002, published 10 books of poetry and a text on child abuse. Viola's work has appeared in numerous anthologies, journals, newspapers, magazines, and online publications. She has contributed work to plays and musical compositions. For several years, she ran the Poetry Showcase for the San Francisco Bay Area Book Festival. In 2008, she was named the Glenna Boucher Distinguished Poet. She was also a recipient of the Mayor and Supervisor's Award for the Arts in Sacramento. She taught at CSU Sacramento, where she co-founded Women's Studies. She has worked in commercial and public media, including CPB and PBS. And she moved back into publications at Mother Jones magazine, where she was the founding director of the International Fund for Documentary Photography, now housed in the Leica Foundation. For years, she served in an international brain trust for the CS Fund on social issues. For the last 5 years, Viola has been fighting stage 4 cancer with hopeful results. She is the founder of the Tough Old Broads. She lives in Sonoma County with her husband, photographer Peter Spencer, who's hard at work in the back of the room, and writes in a yurt. Please welcome Pete.
You're all still here. It's kind of hard to see, the lights on. Yeah. And I'm still here, that's right. Yeah. Before I go much further, I really do want to thank the American Cancer Society. Boy, could I have used you during the worst of my hours. When my husband had to move me on a board into a car seat to take me for treatment, or when they had to call ambulances to take me for treatment. And it was really funny, I never felt like I got treated at all. It felt like horrible torture. But now I am defying all odds, and I have just found out that I've achieved something we all want, NED, no evidence of disease. I wish it for every single person. Our home has been touched a lot by cancer, and this poem is about my husband, Peter Spencer, and his bout with cancer, which came first. Thank God we didn't have it at the same time. I don't know who would have loaded who on what board. I will not miss these bad walls with this terrible vinyl paper, spread lumpy, deteriorated, made to look like a formic potato, without the benefit of starch, impossible to lean on, punitive with patterns of angry insects. I will not miss the jigsaw puzzle with the missing pieces spread like a rash across a tiny table. Irises done over and over and over and put away, forgotten and pulled out of that drawer again. I will not bear it anymore. I will not miss the silent way the waif janitress hangs her enormous arachnid head with those heroin varicose veins and arms, a chicken's rib width. I will not miss the idle chatter of lazy secretaries who ignore the sick, or the tardiness of the doctors, or the crate of pills to sort, some days more accurately than others. I will not miss the questions unanswered, or the gripping fear of earthly loss, or the brave bluing that fails to brighten. They say this is a place of healing. Better put, this is a place where parts are lost and scars cultivate, and lumpy tumors grow, are poisoned and retreat. It is a sarcophagus shellacked with toxins. Some will live, and some will go so quickly. I will not miss the fine fuzz of lost hair, the soft stubble of grief, the maddening passivity of defeat in some, the trouncing determination of others, and always the cheerful face. I can't wait to peel like an orange so I can be just as real as I was before. I will be happy to reclaim my love in his joyful change-jangling electricity, how his eyes shine with discoveries. I wait eagerly. Kathryn, you made me do this. Sorry. I will be happy to reclaim my love in his joyful change-jangling electricity, how his eyes shine with discoveries. I wait eagerly for the first laugh that will erupt like a mud pot bubble, the way he heaves with a silent grin. I look forward to the reanimation, the warming of limbs, the settling of his filmy digestion, the retreat of his haze. Oh, soon, please, his first morning, when we really know we're the lucky ones, the first flinging of his arms around me. I will wash him again without the tubes. I will love him delicately until exuberance tingles with a heartbeat samba beginning again. With a flourish, I will show him that tiny bird in the new red maple tree, the patient little bird that waited all this time for spring. I feel like we should all have a drink or something.
I think we better.
Yeah. So, and this is an odd juxtaposition, but this actually did not come from any cancer-related experience, but an experience I had with the Photo Fund, which is a documentary photo fund. And I saw a photograph that made me want to write this. It's called Down at the Mexican Graveyard. Down at the Mexican graveyard, they are throwing a party with bass guitars. Everywhere in the Mexican cemetery, tombs lined with the lost and the living. Acrobats under a disco lamp that throws stars, while widows, mad from grief 20 years now, rock on the spindle of their folding chairs, and sing like a shadow in the blue light. Huddled and smoking, they languish in the heavily scented imagination of endless rafts of sugar skulls. By this virtue, I should be standing in the garden tonight, candles lit on the sunflower bed in a deep row. I should be out there tonight with my anger and romance, in love and in tatter. I should be howling at the moon, growling, tearing the last of the blackened giants of Russia and African possum faces from her grip. In the earth, I should be smoking a cigar in a negligee and talking to my precious sunflowers. Dissolute, holding a scotch and milk instead. Knocking back from the unspeakable madness I can't stop talking about. Waiting for night to fall on the stoop of my shoulders. A frost, wounded, hateful, and angry, wishing with all I have for a mariachi band in the summer, in the moonlight, blue as the grieving dresses of widows, dignified street mutts poised on the monuments, the women drunk with pain and fury, gone, all gone, the planets whirling, each one spent souls, drunk as skunks and smoking like a barn afire. This is I'm very fond of Scotland as a country and as a state of mind. This is something I wrote my first trip to Scotland, where I walked across the width of Scotland and what they call hitchhiking, and not hitchhiking, but hitchhiking, and it's hiking. And I slowly made my way across with lots of tea and crumpets and a lot of scotch. And I came to this place that was absolutely amazing. Well, it's called Beware the Lambs. In Scotland, I hiked through a sterile forest along the highlands, going west, frozen, misplaced of time, me, an unfound mortal object, stopping in a dead village of crumbling stone. A village emptied, souls forced to flee to factories years before, hungry ghosts gathered with me, unfurled, gone missing. Back to that field of home and forecast thick with age, the storm of forgetting and forgotten, the trial of wet, sticking truth with no coherent path. Along the way, a crude sign, old dripping paint, beware the lambs that stop me cold. Everything in my heart died, my brain and so much more in that instance with the lambs. I stopped to touch the stones and walked among them. I felt the disturbance, the force that took them. I can't remember the name of the forgotten village, or what they did, or how they dressed. I guess they drank tea that day. Tea laced with, well, what was that? It is the tea of the forgotten, the forgetting, the forgot. Vague childhoods, small rooms of darkness, the cool, quiet, self-directed happiness of lambs, catalogs of unknown facts and blurry faces. Children with wood, women at a fire, men with a flock walking meadow after meadow, sudden, shivering, intense history unknown. Back in the present highlands, I came across an empty stone barn in that bitter gale. Inside, a skinned sheep with a head hung from the roof tree. And I felt at home. So at home, it scared me, set me out into the sleet thinking, that barn is what? That sheep is me. As I mentioned earlier, I spent a lot of time with photography. I'm not a very good photographer, although I did take that picture of Annie. So I spent an afternoon with a photographer that I used to take with me whenever I did an interview with anyone, and he goes by the name of F. Stop Fitzgerald. And he was a punk photographer for many years. He kind of documented all of the wild punk scene in San Francisco. So we were lucky enough to spend an afternoon with Ansel Adams, and I interviewed him for National Public Radio. and this is called Photogenius, an afternoon with Ansel. We followed the trail of your hand as you spoke, waving to the horizon, where a tiny ship plowed the water, a mere bubble on Earth's curve. Imagine it, you said. Imagine a city of men, all working like dogs, maybe seeing the light bounce off my window. At least one of them is thinking, landfall, you went on. And we followed you. We were working like dogs. Cameras clicking like old teeth, moto-driven film and steel bodies capturing images of the light, of us. But then it suddenly changed. Resolutely, the light began to gower and burn. The sun finally surged and fell flat to the sea. It's like that, you said, and we all knew what you knew, and we all knew what you meant. It was about light crashing geometrically on the back of a cloud, jagged shadow illuminating the tiny hairs on the shivering cypress as the wind blew icicles that night, and it tumbled in, rough and stark, papery and sour yellow with grays in every range. A ship was coming in the dusky half-night. Inside, a fire threw our shadows, long shadows, out to sea. So whenever I used to visit classes, young poets would come to me and say, how do you write? And what do you do when you write? And how do you feel when you write? So I wrote this. It's called Bonfire in a Blizzard. When I write, it's like a bonfire in a blizzard, a red highway undulating in the desert with my ancestors stuck mouth down in the asphalt, and everything is jerky and out of phase. Like at the movies when the projector jumps fast and nervous, almost out of the frame and everything looks dead, and pretty soon you're talking to the dead with their black eyes, and pretty soon the dead are answering you, and suddenly you look like the dead yourself, and you put on your little black hat and say, I'm a writer. The blizzard in you lifts off like a rocket, and the stars blur, and you're thrown up into the next dimension at the speed of sound, by the sound of flight, like a baseball in flight. Flight through the dark, coming down hard and cold. You draw back your bat and wham, home run, and every blow you ever felt is released, and your whole life flashes before you in 1 second, and every good thing you did looks pretty good. And every bad thing you did looks pretty small. And all the dark poems you never finished finally go out. A particular run that burns black holes in the journal where every stolen word resides. Wake up, honey, wake up. Writing is bleeding, blood draining from the hand, ink seeping into the vein with capillary succulence. A small, illusional fire called passion, intensity, brilliance. Gravity will make your hands flap over your heart, drawn magnetically by the force of every stinking word. Many of you didn't know me when I was young. Hardly any of you knew me when I was young. Parts of this were written when I was very young. I taught the boys to dance. First, the painful box step, tracing that square as if I were a plaza, where all the boys came to use their heavy left size 11 clodhoppers, their lace-up Florsheim boots that crush a girl's thin leather. I didn't care. The boys didn't care. All an elaborate ruse to get next to a girl, an excuse to touch, to steal a kiss, and still, I didn't care that much. Just knowing I could drive a boy mad was enough. Just knowing I could drop his hand and walk away, easy as a grease slide.
Yeah.
His sorry passions running after me. But then I fell hard for a nice guy from Texas. A redhead and polite who knew how to twirl me, do the UFO turn, a double over-the-world move. He had a way of snapping me like gum. People used to back away from us to gasp. My laugh was a gash of cherry red happiness. My heart was beating like a hammer on a horseshoe, tapping a maple tree in lost, distant snows. But suddenly he had enough and left, walking away with a secretly pregnant homecoming queen. Those who saw my shock briskly stepped up to fling me through the twist, the cha-cha-cha, the stroll, bouncing me through bebop as that ballroom of Therio spun the queen, won her in a simple plot of freckled-faced boy meets wrong girl, spinning her on a dance floor wet from a young poet's tears. His ring was hung rather abruptly on that other girl's chain. I can't complain. My lucky heart was broken for the first time as I jerked and hully-gullied, angry as a bumblebee caught in a bottle, my sweeping curly hairdo unglued and fell as I hoofed it through the pony and the locomotion resumed. I wonder who's kissing him now. I don't know. I'll read two more poems. Beautiful Solitude, for my friend Eddie. There is no romance as rightful as that found unbound, walking in a strange city in ringing silence. There is no love greater than a poet falling in love with a place where no one speaks her language, and it's raining.
Yeah.
I know the sultry nights, the marbled stones, the absinthe of dreaming in beautiful solitude, the intoxication of gaslights breathing evenly along a small street off the avenue where you have penned a word with blood-red lipstick on a matchbook. Taken from the drunken hand of a Russian sailor in a tiny bar called Lakov, where the vodka flows and everyone is laughing, living and dying, all in the same breathless moment. And you don't feel beautiful as much as wondrous and invincible. I know the sense of being utterly alone, as if in a womb, impenetrable, an unflinchable tower of the heart pulsing in you. A city that was always waiting for you, as if this city is your true mother and not that poseur you remember from a spanking. This place never grows old in your imagination, or even in a waking hour, when the spirit of all you wished for as a girl is faded, and a dirty floor recalls your name, or when dinner, banal and inconsequential, is still uncooked. Trust me, this romance will outlast the miasmic linoleum of tattered wishing, although by its very nature it is mysteriously shellacked by desire, because this city, this poem of your nature, this is more honest than any impetuous promise or bond, and this, ma chérie, is fact. Well, another tearjerker for me. When I found out that I had a stage 4 cancer, and it's a rare cancer, and I was told I had a few months, and I kept going. They kept doing things to me. They put in a titanium rod. It failed. I almost brought it today. They put in another titanium rod. It failed. They put a steel patch on the bone. That failed. That failed before they sewed me up. And then I finally met this woman who invented something called the artificial femur. And she also operated on me. And it goes from the hip to the knee. And I said, will this be like that flyweight titanium. I heard would never break, and she said, no, this will last you all your life, and it has. So as I was recovering from that, I had this dream. And the first time I went to Scotland, at the end of the trip with a friend, I climbed what they call the Craigs, which is the backside of Arthur's Seat. Arthur's Seat, for those of you who don't know, is what they call it a volcanic plug. It's a little mountain. It's in the middle of Edinburgh. And so I had this dream that I climbed it again. And I woke my incredibly wonderful husband up and said, something happened in my sleep. Arthur's Seat, the easy way. It came in a dream, the sense of cold sunshine, very blink of sweat on my fingers. I had done it before, trained for a year, tore up that mountain, the volcanic plug. Then I woke, and the dream woke with me, to find myself on my body wee mountain again, to climb where I had climbed before the troubles, before the cancer, before the titanium rods, the steel. I peeled myself from the sheets and began to train. I threw myself into the very muscle of desire. I wanted this with all I had, lumping up streets and onto the park day by day until I could fling myself up the dam bank and up on the path around the lake where it was furiously hot. I didn't care. I just flung myself through space, clumsy as a kangaroo sewn to a chicken. Months later, Scotland nodded to me and I came. I felt storied. I felt bravery. I prepared to climb up the easy side. The fervid beast of longing, I growled. I swore I would eat that mountain, that I would win that mountain at 70. For mine was the battle of life over surrender. Mine was the fight of the century. I was not going home in limp failure. Mine was to crawl to the top, to crow from the peak, taking it. There were those moments along the grassy side where I panted, oh, how hard it was, how I just didn't know if I could go on, all the while shooting to the top, coming down, blind with joy. The wet determination, the shoulders pushing, the face contorted, the absolutely grave fight inspiring those who followed. Strangers, friends, who stood aside to cry, "Bra victory, lassie, brave lassie."
Tough old broads. I think Victoria, Dalkey, Kathryn, Pollard, and Viola, beautiful work. Right now, what I'd like to do is bring back Dave Bulls.
Hey Sue, could you come back on stage, please, wherever you are? That was great, huh? Another And before I forget again, like 3 times I've forgotten, thanks to Laura Hohlwein for that incredible artwork from the cover. Standing back here and I was watching Ken Water Street's holding a book. I went, holy crap, I forgot to mention Laura. So ladies, what I have here is from the city of Sacramento. These are certificate of recognitions for all of you. Victoria Dalkey, as mayor of the city of Sacramento, I extend my sincerest congratulations to you and your colleagues for the release of Tough Enough at Harlow's. I would like to personally recognize you for your contributions to the city of Sacramento through your lifelong commitment to enrich the community through the arts, both as a poet and as a critic for Sacramento Bee. I admire the continued sense of altruism reflected by you and your colleagues. I wish you the best on your book release and thank you for your continued contribution to the city. Daryl Sanger.
Oh, my
Kathryn Hohlwein. Yeah, the same stuff. I would like to personally recognize you for your contributions to the city of Sac through the arts, enriching the community through the arts, both as a poet and as a former professor at Cal State Sacramento. I thank you for your contribution, for your altruism, and for your commitment to the arts. Daryl Sanger. Viola Weinberg, I almost said Viola. I would like to personally recognize you for your contributions to the city of Sacramento through your lifelong commitment to enrich the community. Your tenure as a Sacramento Poet Laureate Emerita, as well as a former professor at CSU Sacramento, and your work in public media all reflect your dedication to this city. Daryl Sanger. For you, Sue, for your mom. As an internationally recognized poet, her lifelong contributions to enriching the arts through her work has left a legacy that both her family and the city are proud of. It is my pleasure to recognize Ms. Menebroker, as well as her colleagues on this accomplishment. Yeah, I was a little choked up over Annie there. Don't blow my cover, okay? So we're going to let the tough old broads and one bearded wussy guy, we're going to all go back there where you can meet and talk with them and give them some time to get back there. Thank you for coming out here. There are raffle prizes back there. There's a raffle going on. There's an auction, all sorts of stuff back in the patio that you haven't even seen yet. All righty? Thank you.